let's assume that I know nothing about programming, which isn't that much of an exaggeration, but let's assume I know nothing.
Really, you don't know anything?
Okay, no. Let's assume I know nothing, and you're trying to like sell competitive programming to me. How would you describe it to like someone who's an outsider and someone who might be interested?
A programming competition is a competition where contestants gather. Every one of them is given a computer and a list of problems. A problem describes a program that ingests a certain input and gives a certain output. And it needs to do that within a certain time limit and a memory limit. Once you write this program, you submit it into the grading system. It runs automatically on a bunch of tests, hundreds of tests.
Okay.
Like every edge case, every smaller thing that could happen, everything is covered.
Right.
And then also like big tests to test for time limits, memory limits, things like that. If it passes all the tests, you get a certain amount of points after the competition is over, because the competition itself lasts for, let's say, 5 hours. By the end of it, the more points you get, the higher your placing will be. You have to write an efficient algorithm that does what it needs to do fast enough to pass the tests within the time limit.
Wait, so you said you're scored based on how many tests you pass? Is that correct?
When it comes to the IOI system, each problem is divided into sub-problems or subtasks. And then there's a set of tests for each subtask. And to get the points for that subtask, you need to pass all the tests, every single one.
I see, okay. Do you also get more points if you solve the problem more quickly than your peers?
So it's not the case at the IOI, but when it comes to the ACM, ICPC competitions, in those, each problem is binary. You either solve it or not.
I see.
And then if you solve the same amount of problems as another team, you're graded on how fast you solve them.
I see.
So their speed also matters.
So sometimes it matters.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you've been solving problems for most of your life, right? To prepare for the IOI, during the IOI, and then afterwards during college as well. So how would you compare the problems you see in competitive programming to the problems you see in like a college course?
In college, they can be somewhat similar in the sense that you also write a piece of code and submit it into the testing system, so it passes all the tests. But the main difference could be that kind of your code quality could also matter in college, where you may be required to write more readable code, or you may be required to use certain methods or algorithms.
Right.
And in competitive programming, you can do whatever you want.
I see. Yeah, I've seen some terrible code written in competitive programming. It's like you name the variables like one letter each just to do it faster.
Yeah, and then you have to kind of learn how to do it the normal way.
Right.
After you're done with
on
that.
the job, it matters too. Like
exactly.
You can't do that at work.
Yeah,
that's where it makes sense.
Not in most places.
Right. I guess in a similar fashion, like how does competitive programming differ from problems you get during interviews or like the problems you solve on the job?
I still had to prepare for interviews and stuff.
How? They're much easier, right?
But there are a lot of other aspects, and I've heard about different people with IOI medals that were failing all the interviews.
Why is that?
Yeah, so I wasn't there on the interview with them, so I can't say like the specific reason.
Fair enough.
But I can speculate, and I can try to see that there are other aspects that a hiring manager could be looking at. Like, for example, let's say you solve all the problems perfectly, but then the interviewer at the end asks you, do you have any questions for me? And you say, no, I don't. Then it's gonna look like you don't care, basically.
Or that you're arrogant or something like that as well.
Yeah. And you may show up on the interview with like an expression that says that I'm extremely smart. You're lucky to have me or something. Even if you are, like, it's not gonna look very nice. And like the hiring manager, I'm imagining myself in the seat of the hiring manager and think that, I have to risk a lot if I hire this person. I have to trust them. I have to invest in them. I have to put a lot of my time and money. And this person doesn't care. This person doesn't want this that much. What are they gonna do when they show up at work? It's just not gonna work, right? So there are a lot of other things that could go wrong.
Right, that makes sense. I thought you were gonna say something like they're not able to communicate their thought process because that's not part of the competitions.
maybe, right? Because during the competition, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to explain your solution. You don't have to write high quality code as much as it does what it needs to do.
It just has to work, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's very different than an interview. Interview is actually quite different in that sense, where you need to explain your thought process, you need to explain your solution, your code needs to be a little bit more readable. A person is actually watching you, whereas at the competition they're not. So yeah, it's quite different, and a lot of things can go wrong. At the job, the problem statement can change in the future.
Right.
So you have to write more readable code that's easier to change, that's easier to use by your colleagues, things like that. In competitive programming, nobody cares about that. Yeah.
Nobody reads your code.
Yeah. Nobody reads your code. There's no code review. There are no unit tests that you need to write. So you submit it, and as long as the testing system says that it works, and you're good. You get the points.
You never worry about it ever again.
Yeah.
I've also heard that because like competitive programming is so hard, at some point you see diminishing returns.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, when you learn the basics, that's extremely useful, extremely valuable, and I believe every software engineer needs to know basic data structures and algorithms. But when in competitive programming, you start solving harder and harder problems, learning harder and harder algorithms that become also extremely niche. And I think at the point when I started learning like centroid decompositions or hebalite decompositions of trees, I have not heard anyone ever use them in real life once.
Right.
So I think at that point, like the utility becomes more logarithmic, where the more you learn, the less useful it is.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So it becomes less useful for the kind of engineering you would do once you graduate and once you are in the job market, and it becomes more like a specific thing just for competitive programming, just a niche thing.
Right. So I guess like after some certain point, you would only continue if you really love it, but the utility of it just keeps getting lower and lower as you get better. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What are some of the bigger competitions out there for competitive programming, both like at the high school level and at the college level or beyond that? Like, what are some of the big names out there?
Yeah, so obviously in high school you have your regional competition, you have your national competition, you have the IOI, which you could really use like choosing the right country to be born in to go to the IOI.
I can't. Yeah, you're from what, Belarus?
Yeah,
I'm from America, China. They usually win, right? So
yeah, you should ask someone else how to get the IOI from those countries, but if you choose the right country, you can take a shot at the IOI. Even past that, in university, you have various online competitions. You can always write code forces, get a good rating. You can do Code Jam, Hacker Cup by Facebook. There are all of those competitions, and obviously the ICPC, ACM, which is a team competition for college students. It's a very huge one, and it can be a huge benefit for you, right? And it can help you stand out amongst other CS students.
Gotcha. Why do you find it fun?
I really enjoyed the competition aspect of it. I really enjoyed the kind of the ability to do certain things, to learn this algorithm. Okay, now I know this, now I can do those things and these things, right? I can now do this thing much faster. I can do this operation faster. I can solve this problem faster. Now I have this toolkit. That was really fun, and I really like coding, so it was extremely enjoyable for me. So if you're an aspiring CS student, good luck. I wish you to have fun and do your best, and may the strongest win. Thanks, Kevin.
That was really good.